This tutorial will show you how to set up a pretest, which designates a learning path in Compass Learning, and then also how to create a post-test so that you can see the percentage of net gains between a student's pretest and post-test. So the first thing that you want to do after you log on to Compass Learning is click on the Assessments tab. After you click on Assessments, click on Test Builder. At this point, you have to determine what's the standard set that you're going to choose. So in this case, you could choose one of the Keystone standards, you could choose the Common Core, or any of the other standards in which you might be interested in. In this case, we're going to go with Common Core. Select your subject, and select your grade level. And again, your grade level, it might determine your grade level. Like if I go to language arts, it's going to go kindergarten through up to 8th grade. But if I take a look at, if I would go onto an English, for example, you will see that I could choose a high school level. Leave keyword search and objective additions blank. Click on Next. At this point, you need to choose a standard. So notice that you have strands of standards and specific targets. In Compass Learning, standards are considered objectives. So in this case, if I would choose this strand, it would choose the entire strand, which would end up being way too much, particularly for English, because as the pretest is created, 5 to 8 questions will be associated, or 4 to 8 questions will be associated with each one of these targets, each one of these standards. And in addition to that, you will have a passage in which the students will have to read in order to answer the questions. So you want to be careful with your time. So if you only have 20 minutes, particularly in your independent rotation, you might just choose one or possibly 2 standards. For my case right now, I'm going to choose 2 standards, scroll all the way down, and I'm going to click on Next. These are the exact questions that are associated with those 2 standards. If I click on the question, the window will open, and I can actually see the question, and I can see the reading passage. At this point, I am not able to edit any of these questions. I can go back and determine this is too much, so maybe I want to take out this standard, so I could go back and remove the standard, or if this isn't enough, I could go back and add more standards. In this case, I'm clicking on Next. Now it's time to enter a name for the test. So we recommend usually using your last names and then the topic. So the one that I chose as the standards was key ideas. And then pretest. You want to have your name in there so that when you start creating pretest, you can share it out with other department members or other content similar members who might be able to use the same pretest. Notice that this is the actual item that I'm testing, and I put pretested so I know specifically that's the pretest. For the message for students, I could enter a message here for my students in which when the students would enter the pretest, they would see this specific message. So you can choose to enter a message there or not. It's totally up to you. Most of these items I would recommend leaving default in the beginning. One area that you need to pay attention to is the mastery score. So what is the mastery you want students to achieve on this pretest, saying that they know it, that shows that they know it enough, and they do not need an individualized or more of a learning path associated to learn more items of this standard. So if the students receive an 80% or above, they do not need to get a learning path, and they can go on to the next standard, next pretest. If they get a 79% or below, they're going to get a specific type of learning path in which includes videos and instructions for them to read and simulations for them to interact with and assessment questions, some formative assessments, some quizzes in there as well. So you can choose what you want to set that mastery level at. For very advanced students, we recommend a higher mastery level, sometimes even up to 100% or 90%. For students who are in remediation, you might consider 70 or 75. These are just areas that you can talk about with your other department members. Allowing navigation, and in this case, we're not going to randomize items, but you could randomize items on the test, on the actual pretest if you would like. At this point, I'm going to click on Next. When I do, it shows me the 2 standards I chose. In this case, we recommend that you highlight these standards, hit your Command or Control C to copy them, because we're going to paste them later on. At this point, I'm clicking on Save. Once I have saved, I can see what's being built so far. Here's the pretest that the students would have to take, and then here's the learning path. I want to make sure that I mark this a sequential order. So everything that's in this folder must occur sequentially, which means the students have to take the pretest first. Then after they take the pretest, they'll get the learning path if they don't achieve mastery. If they do achieve mastery, they'll be able to go on. Now, the important point to realize in this pretest, here's an example of what it looks like when you open it up, is that if you have one standard and you're setting an 80% mastery level, the students, if they don't achieve that standard, they will get the same learning path. So they'll all have to do the same activities and things to be able to try to achieve mastery of that standard. If you have two standards in there, and a student achieves 80% in one standard and 70% in the other, they'll only get one learning path. They'll only get the learning path that's associated with the deficiency, not where they showed mastery. So if I want to see what's in the learning path, I could click on it, see the two standards I selected. I can click on one of those standards, and when I do, it will show me all the different items in that particular standard. So I can see these two items that they're going to view, the quiz that they're going to view, and in this case I'm just going back to my parent folder. For assignment, we recommend that you name the assignment the same thing that you named it earlier. This is assigned to students, so students will see what you're calling this, but that way it looks the same for you and for students, which can be beneficial for when you get many different types of pretests in the future. So after you've named that, you've marked it sequential, you're fine with the pretest and the learning path that's associated there. If there's something in this learning path that you don't like, you could go in there, you could check it, and you could remove it from the learning path if there's something that you don't like from that learning path. But you cannot remove questions in the pretest. I'm going to click on Complete Assignment. When I do, the assignment name comes up. In the description, this is where I'm going to hit Control or Command Paste, Control or Command V, so it pastes the standards in. The reason why is that when I'm in my assignment archive and I go through all my assignment names, when I hover over one of my assignment names, this box is what's going to pop up so that I can see the standards I've already selected. That will help remind me the standards that I've already chosen for and that I've already created pretest in. Now on this right-hand side, I want to choose the availability. You can choose My Assignments, which is only going to be for your view. If you choose My School, it's then going to be available for everybody in your school to be able to see, which is a great idea in many cases because then they can see each other's, you can see one another's pretests that you've created. You can go and open a copy of someone else's pretest so that you wouldn't have to go create it again. You could just collaborate with one another in that way. You want to choose the subject that you selected originally and the grade level. At that point, the assignment order is going to stay sequential, and everything else here we're going to leave default, with the exception of assigning to students now. If your classes are ready, you can assign it to students. So if you say yes, you click on Next. Here are all your classes listed. When they're all listed in here, if you do the drop down, you'll see all the students in it. In this case, if you just check one, all the students will be checked, and you hit Finish. In my case, I don't want to assign it to students right now. I'll assign it later. So I'm going to click on Next, and I'm going to click on Close. Now my assignment is created, my pretest is ready, and the learning path is associated with it. So now how do I find it? So I need to go to my assignment archive, which means I can click here on my assignment archive, or I can scroll down here and click on my assignment archive. Once I do, I have to find it in where I saved it. Remember the availability? Did you save it in My School or My Assignments? In this case, I saved it in My School. I saved it under that subject, and I don't really need to add any more parameters. I can click on Search now, and I will see it come up. So here's the pretest I created. And if I click on that pretest, I can see the pretest is here and the entire learning path. is in there. So what I can do now is I can check it and assign it to students when I'm ready, when I have students ready to go. Or in this case, I want to now create a post test. I want to make sure that I have a post test so that when I run a report at the end, for those students who didn't achieve mastery from the pre-test, that after they've learned it and they go through the learning path, I would like to see the percentage of net gain from the pre-test to the post-test. So I'm going to check the box. I'm going to click on Open a Copy. And when I click on Open a Copy, it opens a copy of the exact same thing. Here's the pre-test. Here's the learning path. So the only thing I want to change here is instead of pre-test, I'm going to call it post. And the other thing I need to do is check the box next to the learning path, and I need to click on Remove. I want to remove the learning path because I don't want students to have to take a learning path again after the post-test. It's just simply the post-test itself. So I will scroll down, and now I can click on Complete Assignment. The same parameters come up. I'm going to switch that back to my school. Everything else maintained the same that I wanted before, and I'm not assigning it to students right now. Click on Next, and Close. Now if I go to my assignment archive, and I search in my school, I will see the pre-test I created and the post-test. Best practices have us assign the pre-test first, and after students take the pre-test, say they take the pre-test today, after today's classes are over, I will then go in and assign the post-test to just the students that are in the learning path. So only those students that actually have a learning path, I'm going to assign the post-test to those particular students, not the whole class, because some students showed mastery and they don't need the post-test. So I can hit select, I can click on assign to students, and I open up all my classes by clicking on the plus and minus. And after I do that, I just assign it to the 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or how many students need to actually take the post-test. So that's how you can determine if you need to assign it to which students, because you can run a report and that report will tell you their assignment status, so you'll know if they're actually in the learning path or they're not in the learning path. Or you can run an objective-based report which shows you exactly the score they received on their pre-test. So all the students that did not achieve mastery, you're able then to assign them the post-test. So again, this is just a quick recap on how you can create a pre-test in Compass Learning that's associated, designated to a specific learning path, and then create an identical post-test so that you can run a report at the end to see the percentage of net gain between the pre-test and post-test after students have taken or